Shane, welcome to the show today. We are at episode number 2, The Stories That Keep You Small, part of the series that we've been diving into on this idea of being stuck inside of your firm, not knowing where to go, not knowing how to grow. We kind of debunked that last week, though, where we really hit on the fact that you do actually know what you need to do. Your mind just sucks. the way, you just haven't made a decision. If you haven't made a decision, yeah.
Yeah, and it flows right into the stories that keep you small, right? And that's what I was going to say. This, first you have to decide to grow, and like we talked about, it seems silly, right? Like, of course, everybody wants to grow. But there's a difference in being like, everybody wants to grow, and being like, damn it, I'm going to grow my firm. Right. And I think one thing we didn't talk about is there's a why associated with why you want to grow your firm. Right. Like the last big plateau I got to, I started doing some math and I was like, oh, shit, I could bust that. I could bust a huge profit number, like 10 million in profit. Right. That was my I just got it. And I was like, shit, that's a lot of money. I mean, and I was like, that would allow me to pay certain of my key employees a whole pile of money. And that actually mattered more to me than me making that much money. It was like, oh, based on their current comp system, I can pay them more. And that was a strong why. And I rolled out of that meeting super jazzed. I tied a why to why I wanted to grow and busted through it. And then I had to deal with the stories, right? The stories that keep you small.
But I don't think there could be a more critical time than right now to have this podcast dropping on your feed. So if you're seeing this today, I want you to consider this is not coincidence. It is divine intervention that you needed to hear what we're going to talk about today. As we've just clicked over the new year. It's freshness. It's newness. Here we go. We're about to go accomplish the world. Y'all probably set some New Year's resolutions. You're like, here, I'm going to do this thing. But the thing we're talking about today, these stories that keep you small, we got to attack them. Like, if you don't adjust the way you think and the way you see yourself and the way you see your potential and your possibility, and you run narratives in your head of scarcity, of lack, of weakness, of, well, I'm just not good enough, or whatever it is, we could list off hundreds of those. Like, if those still exist in your mind, then all the tactics in the world that we could teach you would do you no good, because you're never going to believe that you're actually the one that could do it. And so right now is the best time of year for it, right? I mean, we've got a whole new year. It's a fresh start. How many times have I heard people say, this is my year? I'm like, oh my heavens. Okay. But problem is, you said that last year, you said the year before. But I remember
every year is my year, buddy. I just keep getting better and better. And so,
And see, and if that's true, for you, I know it is. For most people, though, they say that because they're trying to convince themselves that somehow they're going to pull themselves out of their bullshit patterns and their circles and their stories and their narratives, and they don't, right? They do it for like a month or two, and then it just like fizzles out. Like, I'm curious, Shane, in this idea of stories, like, when you were first starting out, what was like or maybe there's one real prominent one, when you found yourself stuck, and I know you kind of hit that plateau, you've talked about it in other shows. What were you telling yourself? Like, what was that story for you?
Like one was that I didn't even think it was possible to build a big firm, right? I had these blinders on. Like, I worked at a big firm and I was leaving to start my own firm, but I didn't have in my head that I could build a big firm. I had in my head that I was going to actually lose money and go do my own thing, and that, if I worked hard, it would get to where it made $100,000 a year, right? Which was was probably half of what I was making at the other firm, right? Which, in hindsight, what a stupid damn decision that would be. If I truly believed that was true, that was a terrible decision.
You're like, wait. So you're making $200K a year, and you're gonna go take all this stress and all this crap on to make $100,000 a year?
That was the because I was gonna go start a little law firm, right? Be my own boss. So that was one story. Another story was, if I hired another lawyer to do some of the work, I was gonna make less money, right? That's another story, and that goes everywhere, right? I mean, it's the same as if I hire somebody to handle my intake calls, I'm gonna sign less cases. I mean, that belief is so cancerous to running your firm. Like, if I do this, I'm going to lose less money. I even remember having a conversation with my wife and telling her, hey, if I hire this guy, we're probably going to make less money, but at least I won't work myself to death. And she's like, go ahead, hire him. and I didn't lose any money, right?
Right.
The time he freed up, I did have a year where I made the same amount of money as I did the year before, but the difference was I had this other dude who I paid a bunch of money to help me, and I still made the same amount.
Yep.
Right? So that was one. Another was I couldn't find good employees. That was what I believed. Another time it was, well, we can't find any new vendors, or we got no other advertising sources. I'm like, that's just so stupid. I can't believe I thought that. I mean, that's ridiculous. Right. That I couldn't find more money more places to spend my money. I mean, how dumb is that? But that's what I had, And so, I mean, those are, just a bunch of the stories, right?
Well, and every one of those stories, at some point, you had to overcome it. You had to find a way to work around it. Because if you didn't, if that was still the story you believed, that hiring someone cost you money, well, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have 150 employees right now.
Probably not, right?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it just doesn't seem to match. The funniest, I think this illustrates it the best. It's not a business story, but it's a story that just makes me laugh. So I'm driving with my mother-in-law. We're going over to visit my brother. And he lived in a very nice home, and all my mother-in-law had heard about him is that he was self-employed. Okay, so he was a business owner, owned a business, but in her mind, self-employed, right? That was and basically in her mind, and I didn't know this, but in her mind, self-employed meant unemployed.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's what it meant to her. And so we're pulling in, and we start pulling up into his neighborhood, which is up on the hill, and we start pulling, pulling up the road and whatnot. We pull down his street. And we pull in, and I look over at my mother-in-law, and she has this very confused look on her face. She's just kind of perplexed. She's like, and then I'm all, what's going on? And she's all, I thought you said he was self-employed. And I'm all, he is. And then that's where it came out. She's like, well, do they make a lot of money? I don't. She was so confused because she had this mindset, this story, which was, if you're self-employed, you're unemployed. And if you go out on your own, it's so risky, you'll lose everything, that there was no way anybody was actually going to be successful. So when I look at my mother-in-law's life, well, that's how she lived her whole life.
Oh, yeah. No, my father-in-law told my wife when I started my own firm, he actually told her, and goes, thank goodness you're a nurse, babe, because I know a lot of poor, broke lawyers, right? And he did. To his credit, he knew a lot of criminal defense lawyers who were barely scraping by. They had no systems. They had no advertising. And he was concerned for his daughter. He was like, thank goodness you're a nurse, right? You can always find a job and support you. And even a lot of her friends who were nurses, same thing. If you're self-employed, you're unemployed, right? Or you got a play business or a hobby business.
Yep.
And
and that mindset, right? Then we transfer into, now you're the business owner, and one of the big ones for me was that was good enough. Yeah, and which is interesting, it wasn't really scarcity, but that story plagued me like crazy, because what would happen is I would build the business, and then I would get to some point, and I don't even know what the point was, because it wasn't even like it was necessary that I hit my target or not. It was just when I financially felt a certain way. I can't even describe why I would go there, but it happened so many times that I knew it was a part of it, and I would get there, and I would be, well, that's good enough. Yep. Problem is, as soon as I said that's good enough, what you can guess, Shane, what ended up happening?
Yeah, well, usually, it's really hard to stay at the same spot. Yeah. So usually, when you hit it's good enough, you actually start backsliding, and because there's no urgency, there's no momentum, there's no pressure, and next thing you know, you're making less money than you were, or you're smaller than you were.
And then then I realized that, and I'm like, oh shit. So then I would go back at it. But what I realized is I look over like the 20 years, 2 decades of being a business owner. Had I not done that, right, where I'm at today, it would be indescribably different, like my level, because I was constantly having to build back to where I was. Yeah. So it was like this constant flow, and it wasn't what's interesting, and I want to touch on the framework that I believe really runs everything that it is that we do. It ran you and your stories, it ran me, it ran my mother-in-law, your father-in-law, like everyone who has these ways that when they're saying something, that's not like it's the first time they thought of it. And then I really wanted to look into, where does this actually come from? And it goes deeper than your stories and even the thoughts that you have, because those come from somewhere, right? Yeah. You have like an experience in life that usually creates these deep-seated beliefs, right? And we get to the basics of it. Money is evil, right? Yeah, people have that belief, right? And so with that belief, they start to have thoughts about money. So when they see people with money, oh, they must be evil, or they rip somebody off. That's how you get rich, is you rip people off, right? So they have these thoughts, and they create these stories, which that was the story, which then leads to the actions that you take.
Yeah.
So we see people, and we even see ourselves most of the time, because most of us don't dive in this deep, but we see what we do. And what we do is just the result of the belief that sits way down deep. So even your story, Shane, it's like those stories came from somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't identify where they came from, you can change a story and then you'll find it. Just like my stupid story about that's good enough, that story would just keep coming back. It just kept coming back until I actually hunted down, where is this coming from? Like, why do I keep thinking this way? And how do I eradicate that stupid belief inside of me that was good enough? And for me, it laced all the way back, and actually was a scarcity base, and it came back from when I was a kid, and it came back from a statement my mother had made to me, and it was very interesting. I knew we didn't have money, and I didn't know how poor we were until I grew up. You know, when you're in the poverty, you don't realize that as a child, right? But my mom said something to me, and she said, I chose you kids over money, which was in essence, I learned that it was like this either or. Yep. And that if I chose money, I couldn't choose family. And that if I chose family, I couldn't choose money. But I was in this paradox because I wanted money and I built money. And then I had a tragedy in my life in my early 20s, and I had a son who passed away. And at the time, I was 22 years old. I was 25 when he passed away, but at 22, I had become a millionaire. I was officially a millionaire. And so I'd pursued money, and money had become the drive. That was it, right? And then my son gets sick, and now all of a sudden I have this war in my head because my mom chose money, or chose kids over money. I felt like I had chosen money over kids. My son gets sick, and he tragically passes away. And so then I'm in this really weird place. And that's where the story of that's good enough came from, and I would never continue to push the. And that showed up everywhere, not just in my business. That showed up in my family life, my body, the way I would work out, my targets that I would set inside of my spirituality. Anything I'd set for myself came down to that driving belief that came all the way back from when I was a little boy. And my mom just said something, which she was just probably trying to justify why they were so damn poor. Yeah. I'm sure she was pissed about it. Like, she didn't like it, you know, and she didn't know what else to do. And so in her mind, she had to create a narrative and a story that was okay with her life, that, hey, I love you kids so much, I don't really care about the money. Even though that was a total lie, and if given my mom $1 million, it's not like she would have said, no, I don't want the money, that's terrible. But that little statement to her led to my core belief, and then that core belief, it took me 10 years. It took me at least a decade. Maybe even longer.
When you talk about scarcity versus abundance, right? And
yeah.
money, that's a huge thing for a ton of people. This scarcity issue, this idea that, if you win, somebody else has to lose, or that there's not enough money, or there's not enough cases out there in the personal injury side, or that only the big firms are eating up all the cases, there's nothing for the little guys. I mean, it's just not true, for one. And if it was true, by golly, do you need a different practice area, right? If it was true, but it's not. It's not true. But working on abundance versus scarcity, that's a huge topic in and of itself. I mean, and it's not an easy one by any stretch, because so many of us grow up at different levels, and we always called ourselves middle class because both my parents were in the Army, right? And and that was middle class, or what we thought was middle class, And even once I was no longer in the middle class, but I was in I would say the upper class, right? Statistically, I certainly was there. I'm comparing myself to some other people. I'm like, well, shoot, I'm still small. My firm is still little, right? Over and over. And that sort of leads me into, you've got to believe it's possible, right? Which, we talked a little bit about it last episode, but you've got to believe the growth you want is possible. Yeah. And you've got to really believe it. And if you don't, then you're like fighting an impossible thing, right? Like, I mean, heck, look at the Wright brothers. They believed it was possible to fly. Before that, nobody else did. And somehow they managed to do it. I think about times in my firm, right? We had an average fee that was terrible. It was like $4,500, right? Meaning, and of that, No, that was, our average fee may have even been less than that. And I didn't think it was possible to increase that. I went to another firm. I talked to them. Their average fee was like 9,000. I was like, well, shoot, these guys can do it. I can do it. And then, a year later, I saw when their average fee was 11,000, and I was like, shit, these guys are rock stars. I certainly then can get my fee up higher, right? I no longer believed it wasn't possible. That one visit shattered it. Just like one conversation with a buddy of mine shattered the idea that I could, I was only going to have a firm and make $100,000 a year, right? He broke that frame, and that's one of the huge things is breaking these stories and shattering these frames that hold us back so that you no longer believe it anymore. And for me, I usually have to do it by seeing somebody else, seeing what they can do, right? Like, and hearing their story, knowing it, right? Knowing like I built my whole firm from scratch. Seeing a guy who weighed 150 pounds who got up to bench 225, or being around people who just make a bunch of money. I mean, I've had to do that. I mean, because if you're in your own silo, maybe you're making $300,000 a year, and if you don't know anybody else who's making more than that, even though you intellectually know you can make more money, I don't think you really believe it till you find other people who are making that much money.
Yeah.
And
what was weird for me about that is when you surround yourself with other people that are higher up the rung, right? That they have maybe what you want. What was crazy for me is I think we want to mysticize, like we want to make it some secret formula on success. We want to make it that somehow these people are just different than me or they're better than me. And I've gotten into these rooms with some of these people, and I'm like, that dude right there flies private. He hasn't flown a commercial flight in forever. And I'm going to keep this, literally flies jets everywhere he goes. That's $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 per flight one way. And I'm like, he does it all the time. And I'm talking to him just as a man to man. And I'm like, the dude's just a normal dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa. And never did I understand how that belief system you're talking about, Shane, was more intense than I realized there. I'm like, he just believes something I've yet to learn how to believe. Yeah. He believed it was possible for him to do and to live this way, and that was the standard. And so he went off, and just these beliefs become the stories, which become your actions. So because he had the belief, his stories supported the actions it would take. Just like if you're a law firm owner and you're just starting out, you've got maybe one or two associates or maybe just you and a paralegal, and you have a belief that you actually can build a $10 million law firm. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this year, maybe not in the next 2 or 3, but you're going to be able to build towards that, and you know you can. You have the belief. Well, what will happen is your actions will match it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the belief and you just try to add the actions, right? You have the small firm, you and the paralegal. You don't actually think you can do it. You don't even believe you can do it. And then you get a book or you listen to us here on The Legal Edge and we say, hey, go do these things and these tactical things in marketing. Well, you are already showing up defeated. You will be defeated.
Yeah.
You're going to lose. You're not, yeah.
Yeah, what's that thing where somebody says you can have a good day or bad guy, and the guy goes, I don't know how the day's going to go. And he goes, whichever decision you make, either you're going to have a good day or bad guy day in the morning, you're probably going to have, you're going to be right. Mm-hmm. 100%. I mean.
Yep. You're familiar, Shane, with the phrase, fake it till you make it.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yep. And I for a long time, I hated that statement, right? And a lot of us have heard that, right? And we think, because to me, I saw people faking it till they make it. They were going rent the Ferrari. I remember a very particular person. He went and rented a Ferrari, posted the shit online. He was sitting, I'm like, and I knew him. And I actually was at the airport when he got to the airport to fly where he was flying. And I watched him go and run down the terminal towards Southwest Airlines. Yeah. Now, I'm not talking shit. Southwest is great, whatever it is. But, dude, if you're a baller, you're not flying Southwest. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. That's just not, and especially the persona he was putting on online. That, to me, was fake it till you make it.
Well, yeah, and right? That's totally faking it versus faking it to yourself and saying, I'm going to do these things, right? I mean.
Exactly. And that's where I think most people screw it up, right? They think the fake it is, well, I've got to show the world that I'm already this person. I'm already the law firm owner that owns a $10 million law firm. No, you don't show the world shit. What you do is you believe it to you. You might have a law firm that only did $1 million this year. 2025, you're like, man, we hit $1 million. Maybe you're 2 or 3 years in, whatever it is. You're just starting, and this is the number you're at. That's the reality. The facts are the facts. But in your mind, and if you can, quote, unquote, fake it, i.e. become the man or woman who owns the $10 million law firm today Well, guess what? Then you have a shot.
Yeah, so
You actually
you're
have a
looking to
shot at
pick
doing
up the tactics and the habits and the discipline of that $10 million firm owner, right? I mean, that's
it. Yep.
that's what you want. So fake it till you make it is getting yourself to where you feel like that person, right? You
Yep.
imagine what they feel like, how they dress, are they put together, their habits, is their stuff always on time, are they there early? And basically you become that persona, wrap yourself in that blanket of that person, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually you become it. Like I remember a couple years ago, Trevor, you were hot or you were big into cold plunging, right? You're like everybody's got a
Right.
cold plunge, right? And
Yep.
you got to get in and you'll be brave. And I don't like to cold plunge, not that much. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But jumping in my pool, and I live in North Carolina and Georgia, so in the wintertime it gets pretty chilly in my unheated pool, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but in the beginning, you have to fake being brave, right? Or whatever you want to call it. Jump
Yeah.
in, do the cold plunge, however long you stay in and get out. In the beginning, it sucks every single day, right? And you have to gear up and you have to psych yourself up and pretend you're brave and you want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But after it's not even that long a time period, really. I mean, 30, 45 days, you're like, this is not bad at all. Boom, you've faked it until you made it, and
Mm-hmm.
you did. And same with going to the gym, same with your habits at work, same with everything, same with you just accept that persona and it becomes you.
Yep.
Is what I
Yep.
would say.
And you sandwich it in with the actions, right?
Right.
Because belief will come, internal belief will become as the actions validate it. But also when you don't have the true belief, guess what? Like let's say I'm starting out a law firm, Shane, brand new, and I look at you. I can have belief because of you.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I can borrow your belief because you did it. You have a map, and then you could say, "Hey, Trevor, you could do it. You have the skill sets. Here's what we got to do." So all of a sudden, I borrowed that belief from you, but I still had to act as though I were already it.
Yeah.
Through
And I've seen
actions.
people do that with like alter egos, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they they don't have the confidence. They're a young attorney or inexperienced attorney, or maybe they're just an attorney who doesn't jive well with people, right? So every time they have a client interview to get hired, they get nervous and whatever. And so one technique is to borrow that alter ego, right? Even so far as I've seen some people put a hat on, right? They don't ever wear a hat. They put a hat on. This is my client interview hat, right? Boom. And then they've imbued into the hat. Okay, this is the persona of the guy who can get clients to hire him. And he acts a certain way and they can only do it while they've got the hat on. And then they go in and they do it. And then when they're done, they take the hat off and the hat is the cue. Like, okay, let me fake it till I make it kind of deal. And eventually they'll get to where they don't need the hat. But
Yep.
it's a
Yep.
whole, I mean, you can call it an act. You can say it's silly. And maybe it's silly, but if it works, who cares, right? I mean, that's,
Dude, I know we're about out of time for today's show, but dude, I'll give you two examples of that people will recognize. Number
Yeah.
one, Bo Jackson.
yeah.
Bo Jackson, in an interview, I remember years and years ago, he said Bo Jackson never stepped foot on a football field or in a baseball diamond. Right? He became someone else in his mind. Another second example, Kobe Bryant. And I remember the name his, the Black Mamba.
Okay.
He became the Black Mamba. Like that was the persona he became when he stepped his feet onto that basketball court. So it's literally a belief system. It's like, dude, who are you? Well, I'm the guy. Even if you're not sure, you still become the guy. Like you have to do, and to as gimmicky as it might sound, to literally what you wear. What is this guy? Is it a hat? Is it a what? What is it? You put something in your pocket. Like these things exist for a reason because they're literally the springboard that gets you there. But it all comes down to that story, and you have to start by identifying the story that's holding us back, like at the beginning of this episode. So to jump into some action items, things that you guys need, you can tactically do today, right? First thing, there's going to be 4 steps, simple steps. First step, write down the story. What is one story that is limiting your growth? That you know of. Shane, you shared examples. I shared examples. We gave examples of other people. Now it's your turn. Write down one story that is limiting the growth. Inside of that, after you've written the story down, you're now going to identify and write down what part of that story is the lie. Some of that story might be true, but some of that story is the lie. That's the part we care about, right? We care about the part that you're actually lying about so we can identify it's a lie and pull it out, because step 3, you're going to now write the actual facts. What is actually true about that story? What part is the lie that's holding you back, and what part is actually fact, right? The thing that is true inside of that, married up to the belief of who you want to become. And then here's where it gets tactical. Step 4 is you're going to align one action item in the next 24 hours with the new story that you extracted the lie and added the facts. So you've written the story down, you identified the lie, you wrote down and what's the fact once you've stripped away the lie and the fact that lines up with the belief of what you want to be, who you want to be, and then what are you going to do? In the next 24 hours, throw it in your calendar, put it somewhere, tell somebody about it, say, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and start moving in the direction. One action item that's going to align you towards the belief system that you are the owner of a $10 million law firm, $20 million law firm, $100 million law firm. Right, Shane, you and I have talked about this at length, right, as the growth of your own firm and realizing, well, dude, what's the limit? Well, there is no limit. So if you want $100 million, cool. Well, what does that guy do? Right? What's the decisions I make today that build me to the new future? And that's what I want you to think about.
And I'll say in this too, right? I'm not the kind of guy who, and I have a friend who he's always, he's at 5 million, I think, and he's always imagining at the $100 million level. That doesn't work for me because I can't imagine that far because honestly, I don't know enough $100 million people, right, who have businesses. I just don't know that many. So it's hard for me to imagine. So I always take smaller steps, right? And we've talked about this. When I was at 10, I was imagining a 15 or 20 even. At 20, I was imagining 30 million. And after 30, the target's 50 million, right? So I stagger step those behaviors because I can see that far ahead, or at least I can imagine what that looks like for me versus I'm at 1 million. What's a $100 million firm look like? That's too tough for me. And maybe it works for you, but I have to do smaller steps, but there's still significant steps, right? And there's still action items I can take and go forward and do it. So definitely do this. The only thing I'm going to say with Trevor is I would do this more than once, right? I would do it once, like he says, work all the way through it. Then I would actually schedule an evening where, for me, as bad as it sounds, get whatever your beverage of choice is and chill and sit there and think about it and plan to spend about an hour, maybe 2 hours on this, working through these, because that helps you figure out some of those stories and lies and, on what it's really doing. And this is something you have to do internally because your wife isn't going to know your stories. Your spouse isn't going to know your stories. I might not even know your stories, even though I've been in those spots. I can guess, and Trevor can guess, and he's probably pretty close and help you get to them. But you're the one who knows your stories that are tying you to this and keeping you from growing. Now, I mean, if you've got an office manager, you can talk to them. They may have some input, but a lot of this is going to be on you.
Yep. And that's it, right? You do this, you take these action steps. Here's what I'll say. If you want help with that, right, because I'm really, really good at doing this. I'm really good at taking what you say, listening to you, hearing the bullshit, and extracting it and helping you to see it. This is one of the things we're offering up for free for law firm owners right now. If you head over to legaledgecoaching.com, the link is here inside of whether you listen to this on YouTube or iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're at. You can click on that link as well. But you can schedule, get on my calendar, and we'll dive into this, and we'll have a specific conversation around this because this sticking point that we're talking about today is critical for you to actually grow and scale to where it is that you want to go. And so we offering that up for free of charge for law firm owners right now. So head over to legaledgecoaching.com or click the link here in the bio. As always, if you got value from today's show, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We appreciate you guys being listeners to the show. This show only grows because you guys help it grow by sharing this show up with somebody else who might get value from the conversations and the things we talk about. So this was episode number 2. This is going to be at least a 10-part series, probably longer, as we go through the sticking points and stuck points of what happens after you kind of have the foundation of building your own law firm. Well, now how do you grow and scale, right? And this is where most of you guys find yourselves as stuck. So we appreciate you guys. We will see you next week as we dive into what we call the real reason you're stuck. Have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see you next week.